Abathur is the GOAT when it comes to slugs in the StarCraft universe. He's also one of the most unique heroes in Heroes of the Storm. We're going to be talking about 3 aspects of his gameplay that you can take in your own games. Whether it's home, ranked, quick match, wherever, you can take these 3 key tips and tricks into your play. We're going to talk about positioning yourself, how you can avoid flanks in each map, as well as how to be as disruptive as possible. This means knocking people off of mounts, catching rotations, catching ganks for your solo lane, and just being a really good asset to your team. And then we're also going to be talking about objective phases, how it can kind of be beneficial for those certain aspects as well, depending on the map. So let's start with Alterac Pass. Now we're going to start with positioning on each map first, starting with top lane, and then we'll go into being disruptive and then objectives. You can be flanked fairly easily, especially if the team has an ambusher from here and here. So you'll want to position yourself pretty much behind your fort almost in this instance, because this front here is really easy to get to. But if you have this extra coverage behind your fort, you can easily rotate around it if you see someone coming. And when they get to you, especially if you're in this spot, you can just rotate towards the cannons if they try to go to the back of you. Now with mid lane, there's a not so easy flank here and kind of a mid-tier flank that people can take here. So being right here, pretty much in range of all 3 towers, is going to be really beneficial, but positioning yourself in the front of the fort when you're in mid lane is going to be really nice. From bottom lane, people can get you from here fairly easily, and early game, if you're not paying attention, people can reach you from here. You'll want to try and position yourself right in front of the fort, that way you have coverage from all 3 towers here. For disruption here, after the mid fight breaks out, you're going to want to be placing mines in these key rotation paths. So there's here, from mid to bottom, there's this choke point as well as this choke point. You can also, since we're here looking at this pathing, you can also start placing mines, kind of if you're going full mine build, you can place in this mud pit, this bush, and just overall in this entire pathway here. Now when it comes to going top lane, the 2 choke points that you're going to want to put mines are here as well as here. And then additionally, if you have extra mines, the mud pit is a really nice spot because people are going to walk through it, more likely to at least. And then there's continuing this pathway here to just continue placing mines there. Now on this side, and then it's mirrored if you're on the other side, you can put mines here in these bushes as well. Now for objectives, since we're in top, let's talk about it. Giving your team vision here is going to be really important. Now from kind of top or mid lane, you can reach this bush, again this entire pathway, but since people are going to start going towards your side, you can put mines in these choke points as well. If you have a lot of extra mines, you can start granting your team vision by putting some mines kind of around these areas. This is pretty much only what you're going to be able to reach from mid or top lane, so you don't really want to worry about back here too much. For bottom lane, kind of the key choke points when people start going for you include these areas. So some nice mines to place there. And then if you can, just granting vision for this objective on this side is going to be really nice. That means this bush, and just kind of having a mine around here to see if there's anyone moving forward. Now you kind of have to watch out for the minions, so maybe putting a mine closer to the terrain here is going to be really helpful. Moving on to Battlefield of Eternity. When it comes to positioning, people can take some long flanks to get you from here. Probably not going to see that too much unless someone really hates slugs. And then there's this one that's pretty simple and straightforward. So just positioning yourself right here is going to be really nice. Now for bottom lane here, this is where you might be for a majority of the game because it's kind of the meta to have most of the people bottom lane on 2-lane maps. The flanks you have to worry about, again, there's a long flank that people can take if people hate slugs, and this one kind of a mid-tier flank. So staying around here in the bottom area of the fort is going to be really beneficial for you. Obviously, if someone is coming, having that extra time to be just more in the front of the fort is going to be beneficial. So for being disruptive right out of the gate, if you burrow here, immediately you're going to want to put some mines here and here. So this vent right here is super important early game to just having that extra vision is so beneficial for your tank and for your team as a whole. Now when it comes to these disruptive lanes, when people are walking towards objective or maybe their camp, having this bush covered, there's this choke point right here. This bush is really nice. There's so many choke points here on Battlefield of Eternity that we'll look at more during the objective. When it comes to getting closer to the top lane, there's these choke points that you can cover, as well as these bushes if there's a gank incoming. Just kind of having those bushes covered is going to be really helpful to your solo lane here. And you can even drop a couple mines just to help your solo lane out even more so. For the objective phase here, again, lots of choke points. Just covering most of them here. The choke points that you can really think about are here. This is kind of a nice spot to put vision. But that's pretty nice coverage right there. We want to try and simplify as many of the spots that we have because we have a limited resource of mines. But those are some really nice spots if the objective is closer to your side. And then for here, it's kind of similar to the choke points, but additionally we have these areas as well. And then you kind of, during the transition phase, you can even have a couple mines up in these areas as well, in these choke points, to see if the enemies kind of rotate through it or not. Blackhearts Bay. On this map, you have a lot of structure to work around for your positioning. It's really not until the first couple of turns that you actually really have to consider being on the second line of defense. But from here, top lane, there's really no early flank that people can grab you from. So generally, you just kind of want to position yourself just pretty close to all three towers here is going to be nice for you. Mid lane, there is opportunity for a flank here, but it's pretty risky. So I don't think you'll be seeing that. So just kind of positioning yourself around here if both of the walls from top and mid are up. And then for bottom, obviously there is this, but again, super risky. You probably won't see it, but just in case, you can just kind of position yourself in front of the fort again. Now, once these are gone, you really want to try and stay back as far as you can. It's going to take away how risky you can be with your disruption mines, but we'll get to that next. So from mid to top lane, you can reach some really nice bushes here to help out your team. That includes here, here. And then you kind of want to keep tabs on this boss when it comes to late mid game. You can place a mine there, and then you can place a mine really close to the boss to see if it's active or not. Just in case a mine dies or something, you can just keep track of it. Now, additionally, you can keep track of these doubloon camps if your team is not winning the vision. Those are some nice spots for you. And then the pathways that people are going to take to get to bottom. This bridge is the big one. Additionally, choke points kind of include these bushes as well as these two spots. Now, when it comes to objective, really majority of your mines are going to be placed around the objective. Keep vision on it as much as possible. This is going to help your team be ready for any rotations that they have to make immediately. And you can pretty much stall the turn-ins here next to our favorite pirate for quite a while, Braxis Holdout. And so from here, our positioning, it's kind of another one that's well fortified for our slug friend, but there's this pathway, so you're going to want to try and stay above the fort in this place. And then from here, there's this flank, so just kind of stay under the fort in this case. Now again, bottom lane is going to be where you're going to want to start because that's where going to be majority of the fighting is going to be. So keeping tabs on these bushes is going to be really nice, as well as this path and this bush. If you can reach this bush, it might be beneficial to catch any rotations that are going to head top. And when you are top, keeping track of this bush for vision is going to be really helpful. And maybe just sticking a mine here if people try to rotate towards the regen globe. Now, when it comes to objectives, you can kind of randomly place mines on the actual objective, but people, if they have any AoE, it's going to be really easy to kill your mines. So that might be you only want to save that for a couple times. For Cursed Hollow, there is this crazy mega flank that people might tank, so be safe, be top. And then from here, there's a couple places super risky from here. And then somewhat moderately risky flank that an ambusher might take here. So just trying to be at the point right here of the fort is going to be really nice for you. And maybe even a little bit closer to this terrain here. Obviously you want to watch out for Chromie or Stitches hooks, so maybe just not be mid too often in this matchup. Now from bottom, it's kind of similar to top lane. Just position yourself here and then you won't be caught off guard by any weird flanks from here. Cursed Hollow is notorious for being an annoying Abathur map because you can place some mines here early game just for vision, but when it comes to the rotations, instantly after this fight, you're going to want to place key mines here in this choke point, this bush, this choke point, as well as this bush. Once you, throughout the game, these are going to really the key points that everyone's going to be walking through on the enemy side. And then for top, it's very similar. This choke point, this main bush that there's so much traffic through. And then there's this choke point that you be able to reach, and this bush. Now when it comes to objectives, now we've got these two that we're looking at. Just kind of having some mines kind of randomly spread if you can reach them around the objectives. Obviously once the objective is spawning, you're going to want to try and go to the opposite lane of it so you can get that extra soak. But generally these are some nice spots to take a look at. If you can reach this bush, that's pretty nice, but that one's kind of hard to get to. Now from this bottom one, this is a nice active pathway that people might take, so a mine there every now and then might be beneficial as well. Now for here, it's kind of similar. This pathway, this bush, you're going to want to try and keep vision of to be disruptive. And for these bottom two, just kind of having this bush and the pathways covered is going to be really nice. And Dragon Shire. Now this is a really good map for Abathur when it comes to traps. So first positioning, and now the only flank can really come from bottom, so being in this area is going to be nice for you. But generally this flank is going to be really risky, so you're going to be really nice and safe here. Couple flank opportunities from here. This one's super risky coming from top. From here you might find a flanker that's looking for you. Come there. So positioning yourself kind of really close to the fort pretty much every time. On any map you're going to be really nice and close to the fort or your keep, but in this instance be closer to your cannons. And then here we have a flank coming from here, so try and stay low. Now when it comes to the mid fight, grabbing access to these bushes is going to be super important early game. It's going to help you win that early game fight. Then when it comes to rotations, keeping their side of the bushes covered with mines is going to be really nice to slow those rotations down. When it comes to top lane, covering this bush, this choke point, and then these bushes is going to be really helpful for your solo laner there, so they can detect any ganks as early as possible. There's also this choke point right here if you can reach it. Bottom lane, there's these choke points that you can think about utilizing, because there might be some ganks too here. You never really know, and people do run around a little bit odd, but those choke points are nice for full mine builds. And then if you want to lay some traps, pretty much this is only going to work 2, maybe 3 times, but you can fill these bushes up with a ton of mines. And then once people start becoming wise to your antics, you can just kind of put random mines throughout the control point here. And then for your team, you might want to try and track vision of this bottom camp here. Again, traps, you can do it once or twice here, but once people become wise, you might want to start putting mines in the actual pathing and just kind of randomly around the control point. You can put a mine here just to stall as much as you can. And that's going to be helpful to try and get your team that extra valuable second that they need to secure the objective or stall the objective. Garden of Terror. So this is a really big map, a lot of paths as well, kind of similar to some of the other bigger maps. But starting with positioning, you're pretty much never going to see this flank, but I will mention, a lot of Abathurs might want to stay in this bush because it's a bush that you can sit in. If people are flanking, they're going to go straight to that bush, and you have no defense if you're in that bush. So definitely don't do that, and consider pushing yourself kind of above this fort here and closer to your towers. That way you have maximum safety there. So a couple flanks can come from here. A really risky flank from here. Oops, that was a weird arrow. So you'll want to try and stay kind of closer to the front of your fort in this case. For bottom, just try to stay lower on the fort because the only flank really that people can come through is here. And it's really similar to top. If you're too far back, maybe you're in this bush, easy access for flankers and ambushers. You can put some early mines here in these bushes to get that extra vision. Even here, someone might go for a gank on these bushes here. And then when it comes to those rotation disruption lanes, these are some nice choke points to help your team out to slow down those rotations and get the extra soak, at least for bottom lane. And then for top lane, if you can reach it, there's this choke point. This bush is going to be really hard to get to, but then there's this choke point. Might cover it just as well. So for top lane, for the objectives here, obviously there's some bushes that you can put some mines in to help your team out a little bit. You're not going to really be able to reach this bush, but this bush is super important, as well as these bushes. And there's a lot of choke points here that you can place mines all around for most of these objectives. And then for the bottom objectives here, here's the choke points that you're going to want to take a look at, as well as the bushes. So this one, the flanks are it's really easy to flank an Abathur on this map. There's this path right here and right here as well. So in this instance, it might even be better to be positioned even farther back. But if you want to try and be aggressive, just being in the front of your fort, it's going to be really nice and helpful here until people track you. For bottom lane, the only flank early game people are going to be able to get to is right here. So just trying to stay lower and in front of the fort is going to be helpful. After this early game fight, we've got some bushes here that you might want to take advantage of. Here for vision. And then for choke points, there's this bridge. And if you can reach it, this bush right here is super valuable to have vision and disruption on, because a lot of people like to stay safe and go through that bush. The map kind of lays out the paths for you, so you can just kind of lay mines around them. And grabbing these bushes is really nice. And then for the objective on this one, just continuing to put mines where you think the payload is going to head to is going to be really helpful for you. And then grabbing the really risky bushes, keeping tabs on those, and just having general vision everywhere is going to be really nice if you have the extra mines. Infernal Shrines. So here is kind of where you want to position yourself. Here there's the flank from bottom, so stay close to your fort in the top rightish position, and don't use that vent. It's going to be really easy to get to as a flanker. For mid lane, we have these flanks, and this one is kind of available, but if someone's tracking you, they might be able to get to you back here. So staying towards the front, kind of on the lower side of the fort, is going to be a really nice spot, as long as you have coverage from as many cannons or as many structures as possible. That's going to be really nice for you. The flank for bottom there's a couple different spots. There's here, a lot of easy access to the back here, and then from bottom, people can easily get access to the front here. So this is a kind of tricky one. So just trying to stay as middle with the fort as possible will be beneficial. It's going to be a really hard one to stop flanks, but having extra mines for those flanks will give you some extra time to react. So having some mines here might be a really good idea. So generally after this mid fight, you're not going to want to put too many mines in these vent areas, but they are pretty good for that early fight. For the rotation, a lot of people like to rotate through these choke points, this vent, and these vents as well. And then for rotations top, if you can reach this choke point, these are really nice. It's going to be kind of hard. It's kind of out of range, but these are nice choke points. For this mine, don't put it too far forward. The cannon will shoot it. And then there's this vent and these choke points that you can put some mines. You can easily stack some traps maybe once, maybe a couple times a game. There's a lot of flanking happening on these objectives. So just having as much of it covered before the objective starts, and then you can go grab some XP in the early game. For mid objective, there's all kinds of choke points and bushes and different utilizations that people might take. So just trying to cover as much of that for your team, just grabbing as much vision as you can early game. Late game, you can try to be a little bit more disruptive if you have more mines. For this bottom objective, there's these choke points that you can try and cover, as well as the little crevices that are available to you. And then having some vision on these vents might be really helpful. But, specifically, just try and keep tabs on those mercenary camps. For Sky Temple here, here's the flank for top. Definitely just try and position yourself close to the cannons, but top of the fort. For middle, we have a couple different flank options. This bottom one is more likely, so trying to position yourself pretty much in range of all three structures is going to be really nice in the early to mid game for you. For bottom, it's not going to be too common, but definitely continue to stay range of your structures. This bush is kind of a trap if you want to hang out with it and there is an ambusher waiting for you there. You can easily place a mine here. A lot of people like to go to the tower here. So just trying to, if you can put an early mine here or an early mine in the rotation lanes that people are going to go to after this fight spreads out here in the watchtower. There's a really nice set of choke points here. There's this bush, and these choke points right here. A lot of really nice mine placements there. You can even start stacking them there. Having these mines covered is going to be nice. You can even place a couple mines around the point. Now for this middle objective, there's these choke points that you can think about if you can reach them, and then just having these bushes covered is going to be really useful for your team. For top, helping out your soloing, having mines in these bushes, and then for the top objective as a whole, you really can't do too much except for having mines here. And then if you can place a mine there. Tomb of the Spider Queen. So this is probably Abathur's worst map because there's gems to collect and you can't actually really collect them and turn them in because it's super risky. Those turn-in spots are right in the middle of the map. And the other thing is this map has the most flank spots on it. So your positioning is going to be super important. People can flank you from here as well as here. So positioning yourself pretty much in range of all these towers is going to be nice. Again, here is kind of risky because there's no towers covering it. The mid lane, people can try and grab you from here and a long flank from here. So you want to try and stay in front of your fort as much as you can. From bottom lane, people can flank you from here and here. So this one's kind of a tricky one. It was like one of the other maps we talked about, but just being in range. But again, the way to really negate these flanks as much as possible is to have mines in these choke points, in this bush, in these paths. That way you have the extra time to burrow to another lane, whatever it takes to get out of that situation. So when it comes to our early game fight, there's going to be a big one here mid. So once that breaks out, you can start putting your mines in bush here and these paths. And this bush is going to help out your top lane. These are the really key spots that you're going to want to start placing mines. This is going to do a lot of dismounting, a little bit of damage, and it's going to give your team a whole lot of vision. Additionally, for the objective here, you're going to want to have a mine close because you might not actually see people turning in, but if you physically look at the turn-in spots, you'll see people turning in. You'll see the animation taking place. Now, additionally, for this objective, just keeping the enemy side covered where choke points are, where they're going to walk through to get to the objective is going to be really nice. That's pretty much all you can do with the amount of mines that you're going to have. For a top objective, again, having a mine close to the objective is going to be nice, and keeping, looking at it every now and then to make sure, if you don't have a mine there, it seems it's probably someone walked over it. Maybe they're turning in, so you can try and take a look and try and make sure that you have mines available there. Early game with Towers of Doom, it's pretty much a no flank zone. So you can pretty much position yourself anywhere, but as the game goes on, as the walls die out, you might want to position yourself just behind this big border or just as far back as you can. And it kind of goes same for this one. You don't want to be up here though. That's not a good spot because you can actually be flanked from here. So be careful for that. Definitely position yourself under the fort. And when this wall dies out, man, it's kind of tricky. You just want to try and stay behind your fort. If people have the range, just try and stay behind your castle here. When it comes to bottom lane, this one is the most susceptible to flanks because people can get you from here as well as here. So being back here, not really the best idea. Being under your fort is going to be really nice, but early game, it's going to be even trickier. So you either want to have mines in these areas to track where people are going to be, or just rotate through that lane a ton and not actually sit there too long. Keeping this bush covered, it's going to be really nice. And rotations through mid and bot include this pathway here. This bush, people like to just walk in it for no reason sometimes. And then there's this bush and generally this whole quadrant right here. And for top lane, covering these choke points, it's going to be nice. And if you can reach it, that's a good spot. And then these bushes, a lot of people like to walk through. A lot of people like to gank the top lane by walking through these bushes. So you can even cover these other bushes too if you're worried about missing a mine, or if you're worried about quick ganks happening for your top lane. And then if you're up here, you can always throw a mine up here for your solo lane. The best thing that you can do is just throw mines randomly around the objective, as long as you have, these points covered, these traffic points, these bushes covered. For bottom lane, it's key that you have these bushes covered and this choke point covered for either side. And then for the top two areas, you're not really going to reach the opposite side of you very well, but you can cover the points leading up to it. So that includes this choke point. And then for here, when people come to attack you, you can easily fill up these choke points a little bit to catch them off guard and help your team be a little bit more prepared. 2 more left. Okay, so this one is Volskaya Industry. So the flank is from here. So pretty much being in this area is going to be nice. And then when it comes to mid, there's these 2 flanks right here. There's a really simple one and then a really long one. So trying to be more in front of the fort might be nice. And going for bottom lane, this flank is actually kind of a weird one, but people can flank to you fairly easily if you're too high above the fort. So just staying a little bit under the fort. People have to walk through these towers if they want to get you, kind of thing. And when it comes to this mid fight, pretty much the places, the early mines that you can cover are these 2 little choke points. And then the actual areas that you can cover for pathing include these areas for bottom lane rotations. When it comes to top lane rotations, there's here and these, there's this vent as well, but sometimes teams like to go through here, go all the way to this side. So maybe dropping a mine right in the center here will give some nice vision, maybe even dismount someone. It's kind of nice for Abathur mine builds because you can just place mines all around the objective and people will just randomly walk on them. So that's going to be nice and beneficial for mid lane. For top lane, which is the next objective phase, once you're up here, you can reach all these choke points right here. So those are some nice spots if you're on the left side. And then for the bottom area, I don't recommend putting mines on the conveyor belt. It's not very efficient, at least. It's not very consistent either. So just putting some mines on these areas where people are going to walk to. People don't really like moving around when they're not controlling their unit. So people are going to walk to these solid lands. So just trying to cover these choke points as much as you can. You also want to try and cover these bushes when you can. Warhead Junction. So people can flank you top through here. And if people choose to, they can walk through these 2 areas if your team doesn't have vision on this tower here. So positioning yourself kind of in the frontal area, more in the lower right side of the fort, it's going to be nice. That way people can't get to you super easily from the top, but also have to really work to get to you from here. When it comes to mid, this is a less likely flank, but people can come from here as well as here. So positioning yourself more in the front area again on this fort is going to be nice. And then the only flank people can take is here. So just stay under and in range of all 3 towers for this one. A lot of people like to go to the top watchtower here. So covering these areas is going to be nice. And then there's these choke points that you can think about. There's a choke point here when people like to rotate to the other watchtower, and this choke point as well. There's a lot of choke points in this map that you can really take advantage of. Now this is the old map. I just realized that because there's actually not a boss here, but you can place mines all over this sewer is what it's called now. And you can put a bunch of mines there. People may just walk into it, and that's nice too. But also, if people are on the other side of the sewer, they'll just spawn right into all your mines. So it's kind of a nice trap to place. Additionally, in this area, when these warheads spawn, you can put some mines in these vents to help out your team to stall out the enemy. There's also these vents you're going to want to try and take a look at. That's pretty much well covered for bottom and mid lane areas. Now for mid, you can try and cover these vents and tons of choke points here. A lot of choke points here. So this is where the other sewer spawns that you can spawn a bunch of mines in for if you want to try and go for a cheesy little play. And then to help out your top lane here, there's these there's that vent here that you can cover, and there's some other vents too that you can cover if it seems like there's an ambush you're waiting for your top lane or not. So these are pretty much all the mine spots that you can reach from our positions that we've talked about. We were approaching everything from the left side to the right side, but every map you can just mirror it, and every map I try to pick mine locations that you'd be actually in range of. So thank you guys so much for watching. This was a fun little guide that I wanted to do for our favorite slug. If you liked it, subscribe and like the video, and I'll try and make some more for you.